But going back to Danny Boy, we were ambushed, and we were given orders to basically counter what we were up against, and that was to go and close and destroy the enemy stronghold. And under extreme pressure, like I said, across open ground, we still had to plan. We call it a cigar moment. In pure, pressure situations, you're still entitled to, have your moment to try and figure out how you're going to get from A to B and what that looks like, and have some courses of action if something happens, like casualties, or, if we come across enemy depth, that there's another position that we have to, consider as well. So there's a lot of planning phases. And even as a young 23-year-old, and as, a leader of men, you have to plan and prep and then commit, and then you just have to give it everything that you've got. And that's what we did. I mean, we was under a lot of pressure. Looking back, I just think, how do we even do that? But we achieved it by working as a team, by believing in each other's ability. I'm sure we had a little bit of luck, because this was the first time that anyone's ever done anything like this that I was aware of. I mean, in this generation of going across open ground into defensive positions, and we were just about to do it. Yeah. So we just worked as there was 5 of us on the ground. There was me, another commander, and who was more senior than what I was. Come up with a plan. We then bounded forward in 2 teams, a team of 3, which was me and 2 others from my vehicle, and 2 lads who joined us a bit later on. They would then move forward. So we'd always have 1 foot on the ground.
Leapfrog.
Yeah, like leapfrogging. So we'd always have 1 foot on the ground, we call it, covering our movements, basically. We call it fire manoeuvre. And just approach that position. And, it was violent. There was a lot of trauma on the battlefield. That was the first time I'd seen enemy forces or a human being killed and dead, and there was a lot. These bodies were hit by some big sort of weaponry. 30mm is a huge caliber to be hit by, and you can only imagine the carnage that was in and around. There was a lot of verbal exchange at this point as well, because there was still fighters who surrendered, who put their hands up, and then you have to go into, we talk about courageous restraint. So when you're at an all-time level of adrenaline, which is an out-of-body experience when you're fighting for your life, and you're war fighting, in close quarter fighting, you can't really explain it. It's like a full-on out-of-body experience. And when people have been trying to kill you, and then you're so close to them and they surrender, having that courageous restraint and that professionalism to not fire because they have now not got any weapons, it's hard to get it right. And sometimes you don't get it right because you're so up against it. You make a wrong choice, but there was no wrong choices that were done. We ceased fire. There was people were looking at me to make another make another decision. I was like, what's going on here? It's the first time I've ever been in a situation like this. All of their weapons were lined up because it was an ambush. So they were all lined up like we would set an ambush and get all the sort of ammunition out ready, line up the sort of RPGs, and there's pictures of this when I do my presentation, just to give you an understanding of what we're up against. I mean, it was a full-on pre-planned attack on us, and then I've got to sort out now the prisoner of war, which are the militia fighters. Now I've got to try and move them away from the dead, which was so many bodies in and around, and I've got to figure that out. And all of this when I knew that there were still enemy fighters out there. So we were in the actual positions with them, and it was just like, it was horrendous, if I'm honest. Mad.
And when you describe this process of you exit the vehicle and then you kind of leapfrog your way there with your team, how did you lead that team in terms of like, do you think it was the respect and their core values for you that drew them over the line with you and allowed them to follow you? Do you think you kind of led by example there?
I think you've got to. I'm always one to do something that, hopefully would empower some others. Wouldn't expect people to do something that I'm not prepared to do myself. So me getting out of that vehicle first was important to me, to go into like a bit of a holding position, to then get an understanding of what's going on, because in the back of a vehicle it's really disorientating and confusing. So I wanted to just get to like phase one, which was a bit of an area that would give us cover from view and cover from fire, and then I can then go and have a look at what's going on. But like I said before, you've created this incredible bond 6 months prior to where we're at the moment. So you've shown these soldiers the best of you and the worst of you, because you do get things wrong and you have to tidy up. And they've seen that. They've been on this process with you. They've gone into the scenarios and the situations with you on repetition. So they get it. This is now real. So what we've been practicing, now we've brought into real time, albeit it doesn't happen very often going into positions like that. But we'd still planned for it and practiced. So that's got a lot to do with it as well.
Sort of instinctive.
I think so. And also it's, you're always... We talk about accountability. So when you go through these scenarios and you're picked up on different areas that you can do better on an after action review, we all then get together and we're accountable. So lads will say, I should have done X, Y, and Z. Next time I know that I need to work harder on that. Or, I should have been on that casualty quicker. I should have had the tourniquet out ready and prepared. I now know that I need to implement that. So you're always sort of accountable for what you're involved in, and I think it's just with that cohesion, the time that you're with each other before you even go away, you get it, and you can ask and you can demonstrate, and no doubt they'll follow. Because it's what our job is as well. It's not to question orders, because people say, oh yeah, but that was a bit of a barking mad order. But what define a barking mad order? Look, we were ambushed, they were set, we weren't quite set, but we countered it, and we're here to tell the tale. So actually what we did was right, and we got the job done.
Yeah.
Yes, it wasn't perfect. They say in the press it was like the textbook. It wasn't textbook, it was far from it. It was carnage, chaos, disorientation. But we achieved the end state, and that was to close and destroy and capture, the enemy on that position. And we did it by working together, that overriding belief that we could do it. And when we were going to commit, there was no going back. That wasn't even in the quick battle orders, the QBOs as we call it. It was no. Once we go, we go. If we have a casualty, once the position's clear, we'll come back and deal with the casualties. And that is just the full-on belief of the intent. Yeah. Because once you get hold of that intent, you've got to do everything to achieve the mission. And that's what it was, to just get amongst it.
And so you have this absolute chaos with this battle, and then you have the kind of aftermath, which is obviously everyone went through a huge amount of trauma and a huge amount of mental pressure and mental stress. And I remember you kind of described this process when you were back at camp, that you had to obviously pick the bodies off the ground and bring them back, and a gentleman went into the car.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Not a car, it's an armoured vehicle.
Right.
So basically, there was a total of 20 militia who were killed in action, and 9 taken as POWs, prisoners of war, after this massive battle that we and others were involved in. Once the battlefield was secure by us, there was basically an order from brigade, which is our higher intent, that they believed that Bravo 1, which is the main militia leader, was either killed or captured. And if he was killed or captured, the whole dynamics of the rest of the tour would have been completely different. It would have changed, and they knew that. But the only way to make sure that was the case was to go back and retrieve these bodies, load them up into these vehicles, take them back to our camp, and then the medical side of it would deal with DNA to find out, if Bravo 1 was killed or captured. But it was the worst, in my opinion, the worst decision ever made. I mean, it's hard enough taking a life, from close quarters, and I talk about my involvement in that with, engaging a young 17-year-old, and he was just about to engage me. I was quicker, and I engaged him into his chest and into his throat, and having that so intimate engagement, the noise, the choking, it's hard yards, because that just never, I can manage it now, but you can't just switch it off and never think about that ever again, because it's a war scar, it's a battle scar, and it will stay with me for forevermore. He's 17 years old, this young fighter was. My son now is 19 and just starting his life as a young adult. So as I've growing up, I do think about that, because he had no adult life, basically. And it's and I know it's realities of war, and people do say, yeah, but if it wasn't him, it was you. And then my sons grow up, or Bailey grows up without a dad, and I get that. But until you've been through what I've been through, I don't look at it like that. And then to go back and pick this lifeless body up, and carry him onto the vehicle and load him up onto the vehicle, knowing it was you that ended this individual's life. I tell you what, it's difficult to manage sometimes. It's hard.